And it's actually daylight right now. Look at that. Got some shadows.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?
We're just going to hop right into it. First time of doing a daylight podcast in Finland because, well, doing a daylight anything in Finland is pretty difficult in December and January, given the fact that it's only light out from like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And even then, it's super gray. So, as you can see, I got a little... Oh, weird. It mirrors on the camera. So, as you can see right here, I got some shadows and some sunlight coming in. It's nice. It's actually really nice. But, yeah, this weekend... I'm going to talk about this weekend and just kind of whatever's on my mind. This weekend was a good one. Did a little reflecting, walked in the forest a little bit, got to play in the snow with the under 12 team for our outdoor practice. We were missing a kid, and so one of the teams needed a fifth player. So your boy stepped in and dominated, played a little bit of O-line. And, obviously, I didn't go as hard as I could against these 12-year-olds. But at the same time, I got to let them know they ain't fucking with me, And we hadn't really been able to score on offense just as a team because in the snow it's kind of hard to run very fast. And at certain points in the field, we're in 2-foot deep snow. And so running and doing anything is kind of difficult. And I was like, we're going to score. So on run plays, I'm trying to block 2 kids at once, and we scored. We had some fun. And it's funny at this time with those kids. I think some of them understand English pretty well, but they're all they're all 9 to 12 years old. And so some understand English, but are kind of just shy, I think, to talk. But now after me being with them once a week for 2 months now, there's a little bit of a relationship, and I know all their names, they know my name, and the practices in the snow are kind of fun because you can kind of throw snowballs and push them down, and they can try and push you down and tackle you, and it just made me think, and we have this new German guy here with us, and he was at the practice, and we're practicing in, I don't know, it's minus 10 degrees Celsius, which is 20 Fahrenheit for all my Americans out there. And these kids are stoked and you wouldn't even know that it's that cold outside. And relatively speaking, it's kind of warm here. As I mentioned last episode, Finnish people don't ever think it's cold. But the parents are excited about the kids being out, and I was laughing with my German buddy, and he's like, dude, in Germany, the parents would be mad about this stuff, or, and I said, well, yeah, in the States, the kids wouldn't even do this, and it just made me laugh, the kind of differences of culture, and I'm not saying it's better here or worse somewhere else or whatever, it's just interesting to see differences, and even with the differences, we're all just so much more similar than we really think. Especially, I kind of touched on it in a very sarcastic way 2 episodes ago, saying Europeans think they're way different than Americans. But, man, we're all, because of technology, I think, this is just my own little hypothesis, we're all so much more similar than we really think because for the most part, we're consuming a lot of the same thing. And whether it be American media or just media in general, it's all structured in very similar ways. And so the information that's out there and presented to the masses through social media or mass media is all very similar, which then creates very similar trains of thought, which then creates similar ways of being and beliefs. And so, I think maybe in places like Asia or, I don't know. This is, again, just hypothesis. Other places that than the Western world, US, Europe, all part of the Western world. Outside of that's where I think there's more true differences in people. But I mean, it also really just comes down to people want to connect, people want to be included, people want to feel loved. And that's kind of what we're all seeking in one way or another, or trying to suppress or distract ourselves from not feeling. And I'm going to get into that. I had some like kind of deep thoughts while I was walking in the forest on a couple different levels, and I'll probably ramble a little bit, but maybe just stay with me. I feel like I'm being a little philosophical. Maybe not. Who knows? To some I am, to some I'm not. But yeah, this weekend on Friday, I don't have practice or I don't have any obligations. And so I just went out. It was a beautiful day, like amazing day. And I just went out. There's a observatory near my house for like looking at the stars, I guess, kind of on top of this hill. And I'd been there before. If you go back to the date with T-Girl, we walked there. And so this was like, last time I went there was like a month and a half ago, before there was very much snow. And all of these, again, this is going to be a rambling story, but all these little tidbits play into it. And so I was like, man, I haven't been there. It's kind of a cool little location. There's a cool ice rink out there and a little mini forest and the observatory where you can kind of get a good view. Let me go there. Let me check it out. It's a beautiful day. So I start walking there, and the only way I know how to get there is this very like roundabout way. And so that's the way I'm heading, and I'm walking up through the forest, kind of up the hill. And at this one point, I'm on a path that's people are doing cross-country skiing. Like I'm going uphill and they're skiing past me. And I don't really notice any footsteps other than my own. And no one's given me any bad looks or anything like that. But at one point, this guy walking his dog tells me that I'm not really supposed to be on that path. It's only for skiing. I said, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know. And the issue was that path, when I had gone there before, a month and a half ago, before there was snow, was the way we took to get to this observatory. And so I didn't know how to get there any other way. And so at first I'm like kind of mad because I'm like, man, I'm not, this is going to take longer. My goal for leaving the house was to get to the observatory. And so now I'm walking through the forest, which is actually super cool, way better of a way to go. It's like magical, snowy trees everywhere. It's cool. It was like a little movie in a way. And I'm walking through there, but again, I don't know where I'm going at all. And I'm starting to walk on a path that, because of the snow, you can only really follow paths where someone has walked before you. I guess you can walk through knee-deep snow, and that's cool. I did that at a certain point, which I'll get to. But you have to kind of follow a specific path, or else you're out doing your own thing. And so this little path that I'm following, while it was cool, it was taking me kind of the different way than the ski path was, which I knew would get me to the destination. And I was kind of starting to get a little mad, and then I kind of just caught myself like, yo, like the reason I left the house was to get to this observatory. But I also just wanted to have a good day, and I've been really trying to work on just being in the moment a little bit more and not being so concerned with like it having to be a specific way and being in the way, being like sticking to a goal, but also at the same time being open for change in order to maintain presence. And I was like, the reason just to leave the house was this thing. But ultimately, I just wanted to have a fun, good day. and think some stuff and learn some things. And by being on this new path, I'm experiencing something new. And this new path that I'm on, which is still like people had been on before, was way cooler looking than that just wide ski path that I'd already been on once before and didn't really have anything new to see, you know? And so I'm like, dude, stop worrying about it. And so after a little while, I was like, yo, well, I don't think I'm going the right way. And I was like, well, that's okay, because I'm still having a good time. But then also the little goal-oriented mind voice in my head was like, no, dude, we got to fucking get there. And so I'm like, okay, I think it's this way. Fuck this path that I'm on. I'm going to just do my own thing. I'm going to walk my own path. And so I start walking in like knee-deep snow. And I'm walking, and I get to a point where it's really thick, like bushes, and it kind of almost feels like it's about to go down like a little ravine into a river bed kind of thing. And I start thinking, I have no idea where I am. And it's not like I'll get lost because it's a small area, but I don't want to fall into a fucking riverbed or fall into a hole, because with all the snow, I don't really know what's under me. And so while being on this new path is cool, it's my own path, it's also a little bit dangerous. And I really have no clue where I'm going or where it's headed because there's no footsteps in front of me. And so at one point I get to a spot where I'm like, yo, this is a little sketchy. I probably need to turn around. And so I turn around and have to just retrace my steps to get back to where I started. And as all of this is happening, the idea of not being attached to the destination or the goal, the idea of these different paths, the main is, I just related this whole thing to life a lot. The main path that the ski path was on is, I was going at it the wrong way, and I technically wasn't even supposed to be on that path. But that was like the true main path that everyone knows, and that's why that little area is made for. And then so instead I was off the side path that was still a main path, but for me. And then I started doing my own thing completely, like I said, where I'm making my own path. I'm going where no one has ever gone. And while that was fun and cool, it got to a point where I got scared and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so then I ended up having to go all the way back to start. Not all the way to the start, but go back quite a ways and then get on one of these more well-established paths. And so I relate that to my whole life. That little rambling story is, I've always prided myself on doing my own thing and walking on my own path and being on the road less traveled, per se. With my life and college career, and then now, I graduated almost 6 years ago, which is crazy now that I'm really thinking about it. I had a Facebook memory from when I was in Portugal that said 5 years ago, which really just like tripped me out in terms of how fast time is going. But I'd always prided myself doing my own thing, and I've never really felt like I can relate with too many people because of this little path that I've taken from junior college in California to going to North Dakota Division I for a year, having to go home, sit out a semester, work graveyard shift at Gold's Gym, going to University of New Haven, playing there for 2 years, graduating there, driving cross country all the way back. I've driven pretty much everywhere in the U.S. except the South. And then going to Portugal, playing there. After that, Poland. Then after that, Finland. It didn't work out. Traveled quite a bit that year. Or before then, I was in Nepal and Asia for like a month with some friends. And so anyway, this whole thing. And then this last year has just been a crazy fucking path in itself, where Barcelona, play half a season there, gets canceled, do lockdown, move to Czech Republic, full almost season there, lockdown, to Finland. You know, along my analogy, I feel this last year I've really been walking in the snow up to my knees. And I know a lot of us have with the lockdown, like everything that's happening right now. Like there's no footsteps in front of us that we can just follow. You know, we're all going through it. And so I'm not trying to make myself sound special or anything like that, but through the moving 3 different countries and those things, and just like everybody, the complete uncertainty of things, I've been walking in some knee-deep snow with no footprints in front of me. And man, that shit's been kind of scary at certain times. I know it for everybody, it probably has. And it's like I realize, you know, throughout lockdown, there'd be certain times where, you know, as I've mentioned, I've been a career stoner my entire life, and I don't smoke at all anymore now that I'm back into normal routine, normal life. Like it's not what I want to spend my money on, not what I really have a desire to do. But when I'd get into those lockdown situations and I'd really start to get in my own mind, essentially getting to that point of like, yo, this is kind of sketchy. Maybe I need to backtrack. Maybe I need to go back a little bit. And so in both lockdown scenarios, there was like a couple weeks out of the month, or maybe even a full month out of the 2 months, where I was in old stoner mode. And I kind of kicked myself afterwards, or even during, like, man, I'm fucking back on this old path that I used to be on. And I'd kind of judge myself for it. But I realized on this path, and actually I'm just realizing it as I say it right now, even though I've thought about this whole concept for the last couple days, that it's okay sometimes. You need to go backwards in order to avoid a sketchy situation, and you need to go backwards and then get on that established path, that comfortable path, in order to navigate around the riverbed or the hole or the cliff or whatever it may be. And so I think with that, I haven't judged myself as much, or I've at least like accepted it. And I don't know, maybe someone can relate with that in their own way, because I don't know, now I'm totally in my own head right now thinking about shit. But no matter what we do, like, the journey is really the destination. I know that's some cliche fucking saying, but as I said, my reasoning for leaving the house that day was to get to the observatory. But even once I got to the observatory, the only next step then was I got to go home. And so to try and round out that whole analogy of the paths and stuff is like, I guess, and I'm going to add one other thing to it, is then on these established paths, you're going to run into other people, and you might pass them going forward, you know, and so it feels like you're winning the race or whatever, or winning, you know, it's not really a race, but sometimes we feel like it is. Or someone might be coming the opposite direction as you, going completely downhill while you're going uphill. But they're just at a different part of their journey. They maybe already got to the observatory and they're on their way back. And so or maybe they're coming from a completely different spot in town and you're just crossing paths right there. And so with that, it's, I think sometimes in life, now getting back to life, we will judge people, and I'm speaking about myself. I have judged people that I feel like I'm going up the hill towards the destination and they're coming down the hill. And I'll judge them and think like, oh, I know myself better than them. Or like, oh, I'm better, I'm better than them in some way because I'm ascending and they're descending. When in reality, they just came from where I was going. And so with that, the whole premise that I realized is, you can learn something from everyone, even if they're descending while you're ascending or whatever, or you feel like you're passing them and beating them. And kind of that weird combination of meeting people along the path is just such a complete random chance. And I've met some really fucking cool people over the last 10, 12 years, but specifically, I think, everywhere I've been, like every little stop I've had that I just listed, there's been one or two friendships that have like really impacted me and have stuck with me in one way or another, whether it be super permanent and we still talk today or just really helped me out during the time. But then there's also been relationships or people I've met throughout those times that I almost like look negatively upon and look downwardly on. And that's probably not right to me. Because in order for, this is getting a little hippie, but in order for everything to work in the way that it has, it's arguable that we needed the good connections, the bad connections, the non-connections, the whatever. Because without one little piece of it, it would ultimately be different. And then kind of rounding up this thought and rounding up this analogy, while we're all on our different paths, and it doesn't really matter whether you take the main path, the side path, your own path, whatever, at the end of the journey, we all just go home. And in relating that to life is, at the end of the journey being life, we all just fucking die. It's not like someone does it better than someone else. The result for all of us at the very end is exactly the same. And I think that's something to keep in mind. I don't know. So that was kind of my main idea with that this weekend and what I was thinking with the paths and how I related it to my life. Because, man, like I said, it's been tough at times. I'm not going to lie. I think, I don't know. I started this shit, and I think a big reason that I've continually moved around is just because I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. I've mentioned this before. Like back in Washington and Issaquah, I just never felt like I belonged there. And kind of everywhere I've been, it's just always for whatever reason. And I don't really feel like I belong here, to be honest. The place I've felt like I belong the most was Portugal and Lisbon, and that's why there's such a like a love in my heart for that. But it's like I'm searching to find this thing, and the more I think about it, like I don't even know if it fucking exists. Like I think I'm searching for something outside of me that really is inside of me. The feeling of belonging doesn't really relate to a location besides my own self. And I'm working on that, and I think like I'm definitely getting better. Like I'm for sure. It's been fun to like think about my growth, and that's what a big reason I like this podcast is, sitting here talking to myself. And I wish I'd be doing this for the last like 6 years in order to see like how some of my thoughts have progressed, and hearing some conversations I've had. You know, I would love to hear myself talk about like when Trump got elected in 2016, just for instance, because I know I've had such a like roundabout way in terms of thinking of politics since that's happened. But just, I'm sure life and relationships and all of that shit, you know, it'd be really cool to have. Like I was talking with the guys today, say like, you know, things are going well here. But there's, you know, some things that happen that in the past, like old Joey would be freaking the fuck out about. And now I'm good. Like I'm at a place now where I just view everything as a test, no matter what it is, whether it's a relationship with, you know, a romantic relationship or just a friendship, whether it be something happens to me in day to day, whatever it may be. I just view it as a test, because that's all it really fucking is. It's never the end all be all. There's always a response. There's always a way to fix it or get through it. And so, like, for example, yesterday at practice, and Mondays are kind of like our more chill practices, kind of more individual focused. But we only had like 4 receivers there. And of the 4, 2 of them are from like the B team. And one is a first year guy who's actually really fucking good and has a lot of potential. And then one, who was the other one? Oh, yeah. And then one is like the quarterback for the B team who's actually got just a good little athlete. So, but basically none of them are the guys that are the quote unquote starters or the reason that I came. And so it was like frustrating at a certain point because, you know, I want to get better. I want to make things progress. And I'm not the only one frustrated. I know that. But I was like, you know, could catch myself like getting almost like pouty, or not pouty, but just negative. I'm like, dude, shut up. It's a test. Like, you're here in the now. Yeah, it's not exactly how you want it to be. But let's fucking make the most of it. Let's get better. Let's work on it. Let's have fun. And like I said, that was a test. And Joey 2 years ago, Joey a year ago, Joey however long, probably would have failed that test. And I'm not saying I passed it with flying colors yesterday, but I definitely got a better grade on it than I would have in the past. And so, you know, it's just kind of fun to see that progression. And it's interesting as I get older, and, you know, with age and experience comes some wisdom, and I still don't know much, but at least like I'm learning more and more that I don't know much. And I think that's a true that's a true factor of wisdom, is knowing that you don't know. And I see things completely different now. And, I see my old self in people and in the way guys will talk and explain things. And, again, I wish I would have had a podcast starting 5-6 years ago. It'd be funny to listen to 25-year-old Joey talk, because 25-year-old Joey thought he had the shit figured out, but it was tough to tell 25-year-old Joey something without him being like, man, I fucking know that, bro. Oh. But no, I think I'm slowly but surely getting more into the comfort of just belonging in my own skin. I think maybe that's what I've struggled with. As I said, like, I was always looking for a place to belong. And I know it's a test and it's a process. And to riff off of that with another deep thought while I'm walking around the forest, is, us as human beings, we're animals, essentially. And we want to connect. And that's our goal, is to make connections, feel loved, feel like we belong, etc. And all people would agree with that. But the way that normally gets looked at is with connecting with other people and other beings. And that is important. That connection with others is huge. But I think, especially nowadays with social media and things of that nature, is there's such an emphasis and focus on connecting with others that we ultimately lose and ignore and displace, and I think those are good words, the connection with ourself. And that's the connection that's far more important than any connection with anybody else. Because until you're right with yourself, all of these other connections you're trying to make are essentially just trying to fill a void that you're lacking in your own self. At least this is what I'm just going off my thoughts. I'm not saying I'm right in any of this shit. And it's not even just always connections with people, maybe connections are wrong, but just distractions. Sometimes I think we mischaracterize trying to connect with others as just a distraction from connecting with ourselves. Maybe that was a better way of saying it. But there's other things to distract, or other things that we use to try and fill that void. Some people it's food. Some people it's TV and it's media, and that's the easy one that's able to point at right now. Because you can just kind of turn your mind off and scroll or watch Netflix or whatever, which I watched some Netflix this weekend, the Kaminsky Method on Netflix. Woo, watch that. That's some of the best shit I've seen in a while. And so, listen, I'm talking about it, commenting on it, and still very guilty of it at times myself. So I never want to try and preach like I'm some fucking expert or anything. I'm just sharing my thoughts. For some people it's drugs or alcohol. And I think in some cases with all of these things, people are trying to use those things to feel better, to fill the void of connection, the lack of connection with themselves, but also at times people are using them to suppress and ignore the feeling that they do have a lack of connection. It's like this duality kind of thing. And so I started to think as I was walking around, because I had headphones on for a while and I'm listening to music and jamming out, or listening to a podcast or something. But then after a while, I was like, yo, let me take this shit off. Let me just like hear my own footsteps. Let me think my own thoughts. Let me, just get in my own zone. Because even with listening to the music and the podcast, like I'm being disconnected from myself in that sense. And so I started thinking, what about somebody, and I started to get jealous of this, about somebody 200 years ago who was walking in this same forest as me. There's no such thing as a phone, headphones, social media, any of these outer distractions, right? And so for this guy who'd be walking through the forest, because as I'm walking, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this would be a good idea for the podcast, or this would be a cool picture to take, or I should talk to so-and-so about this. I had all these other distractions in my head and ideas because of these things. And I started to think, for this guy 200 years ago, there's none of that shit. So these thoughts that I'm having, he would never have. Because it would be impossible for him to think I should talk about it on my podcast because there's no fucking microphones yet. There's not a camera, And so I'm like, damn. Like, imagine him just walking around, because at a certain point, I'm really getting in my own thoughts and really thinking and getting to this train of thought. But then it would get interrupted by one of these podcasts, take a picture, what the fuck's on TikTok ideas. And I'd be like, yo. And then I'd kind of have to start it all over again. And I'm like, damn, for old Bob from 200 years back, 300 years back, he wouldn't get that distraction. He'd just be completely in tune. And at the same time, maybe his distractions, he'd have to worry about bears or something else, or he'd have to be thinking a lot more like, I need to go catch some food. That needs to be his thought on his mind. I know there's probably some differences and some distractions that he had that I'm not really thinking about. But I was just jealous because I was like, damn, I wonder what his train of thought was like. Because to me, it would just be so much more easier to be fully entrenched in your own thoughts and your own self, and then being able then to connect with yourself. Because even if, it's not like I have now throughout my travels and all this stuff, like, I have all these friends all across the world, or these acquaintances or people that I know that I can just be connected with at a couple movements of the thumb. But for him, like, his world was so much smaller. And while that sucks in one way, it also just focused everything into that smaller world a lot more. And so I've really tried to take that, and this podcast thing is weird too, because like I said, I'd like to grow it because I feel it helps me, and I get some good responses from some of you out there, which I really do appreciate. But at the same time, I know it like doesn't fucking matter like in the grand scheme of life. And it may be a distraction from connecting with myself, but at the same time, I don't know, it's a duality kind of thing. And so I don't know. Yeah, I think that's I don't really have too many jokes or anything funny to talk about this one with. I don't think. This one's a little bit more serious. I don't have any real finish problems, at least off the top of my head right now. I'm going to look at my Twitter, see if I've talked about anything. Oh, one thing, I guess since this one's a lot on mental thoughts and health. I don't know, health exactly is the right way to put it. But something that I've been doing lately is taking vitamin D, zinc, and magnesium supplements or pills or whatever the hell they're called. Because, well, here in Finland there's like no light, so like you don't really get vitamin D, so I wanted to supplement that. And then a few of the people I follow and respect online talk about magnesium and zinc, so I've been taking those. And I've been doing it for like a month now or so. And then I went off of it for like a week. That like week, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, when I said I was kind of in a funk. And so I don't know if that was the reason for the funk. I hadn't really thought about it at the time. But now I think there may be some correlation to it. I think I notice a little bit more energy, a little bit better of a mood with some of that stuff. And so I don't know if it could be all placebo. I'm not sure. But I just wanted to pass that on. I'm not a nutritionist or haven't studied or anything like that. I don't have the science behind it. So also don't listen to me. But for some, I think the vitamin D, from what I read and have heard people talk about, that one's like super important. And the other two, I think Rogan talked about zinc and somebody else has talked about magnesium that we just don't get enough of in our typical diets. So I don't know. Wanted to pass that along. I saw a really cool video of, well, not really cool, but an interesting video from Gary Vee. Haven't really been following him much lately. I used to be a big Gary Vee guy, and I still think he's great. But just after a while, his message gets super repetitive, and yeah. But he was talking with some other kind of famous dude about how like China's going to be the next power, and we're in transition time of the U.S. losing its like alpha status. And so that's okay, I think. It's just how things work. It's how times go. You don't stay on top forever. And so like, I don't really know this is just like always me just thinking out loud. If I had a kid today, I would definitely be trying to get him to learn Mandarin or Cantonese, because I think in the future, and being able to communicate and do business, or have that avenue open to China, will be the same way how like English had become the language of the world over the last maybe, I don't know, 100 years or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's just a thought that came up. And I only have, for retweets of the week, I really only have one or two, but both are good on their own ideas and senses. But here's one from Miriam Hasna. I don't know if I say her name right, who I've shared one or two from her before. She's probably my favorite follow on Twitter for like spirituality or mental health or thinking ideas, connecting with feelings kind of thing. And anyway, she says, anytime I'm lonely, not only do I know it cannot be solved by another person, I know it's not about another person. Anytime I'm lonely, I know it's because I miss myself. And that one, I'd never heard loneliness be explained that way before. But that one hits home with me a lot. Because at times throughout this travel and journey, and when you move every 6 months or so, it's tough to start and stop again, and it's tough to I really enjoy making new friends and being in a new place that goes along with moving. But it can be lonely, even if you're surrounded by people. But I think that's also just because I'm not truly feeling like myself. Because at times you're completely alone and you feel good and you feel fine because you're doing your own thing and you feel like yourself. And so I don't know. That was a good one for me. And then on a completely other note, kind of on the Gary Vee side, I guess I got two more, but I'll go on the Gary Vee side. James Lindsay, who is like extremely controversial on Twitter. And I stopped following him, but every now and then I just look at his profile because it's like some of these guys who are super active on Twitter with like controversial things and having hundreds of replies all the time. I don't know. I think they need to live life a little bit more, and I'm nobody to judge, but it's like, fuck, dude, get off Twitter. Like at a certain point, especially people on TikTok, like, and I've fall victim to this myself too. Like people get these big followings and then feel like in order to maintain them, they just got to keep feeding and feeding and feeding the beast. And so then they just come up with some outrageous shit. But anyway, James Lindsay, he does have some good stuff, I think. And he's not afraid to speak whatever the fuck he's thinking, which I really appreciate. He says, in a totalitarian society, it is not enough to be non-thinking. We must be anti-thinking. And that kind of goes along with, I think, the U.S. becoming, it's losing its alpha. But also China is also like totalitarianism in itself, but they've just been doing it way better with like a much better focused. I think the U.S. is more focusing on, it's just about the rich getting richer, the 1%. And I again, I don't know much. This is my feeling. China seems more maybe that they actually want the country to be the top dog, where in the U.S. it's just more like the top dogs being the top dogs. And then I think to end the episode, and this is kind of how we started, from Great Minds quotes, kind of corny, but also has some good ones. This is from Aristotle. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And by no means do I think I'm wise, as I said earlier, but I'm slowly to beginning to know myself and know what I don't know and know what I need to learn and know what I probably will never know. So yeah, I think we'll call it a day. First, like I said, daytime, there's still sun. It's 4:00 in Finland. We still got some natural light, baby. Thanks for tuning in. I know I'm catching you at the very end here saying this, but to those 4 or 5 of you who constantly watch all the way through, if you could just share, not like post it, but if you could just tell a friend that you think would like the type of stuff that I do, I'll just really appreciate that little word of mouth recommendation, because I think that's probably the best way to grow it. You know, I do want to grow this thing, but also I want to grow it in the right way. And I think with me speaking on speaking on the things I speak on, it's not going to be cool to the masses. I was talking about this with Zach, who you should check out this last episode 55 with Zach Kavanaugh. He tells probably the craziest stories of this podcast ever. And we were talking after the episode saying, he's like, well, if you want to grow it, you know, you need to do this and you need to be that and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, dude, I mean, I just want people on that keep it real, and I want to keep it real. And I go, I don't foresee it growing too fast with that being the game plan, because right now keeping it real isn't very cool to the masses, at least. And so, yeah, If you could do that, if you want to, I'd appreciate it a lot. Also, if you make it all the way through, drop a comment for me. Let me know, please. It'd be really cool to read those. You honestly don't know how much that makes my day. If there's something that really hit you from this episode that you liked, if you could leave that in the comments. I know that's like super cliche to say, and it's partially to get the algorithm, but also, I mean, it's not like this is just blowing up or anything. I'm more just curious to know things that people relate with and things that you liked and or didn't like or whatever, and to know who's listening to the end, because I know there's about 10% of the people who watch who that can depend on how many total views I have. But yeah, alrighty, y'all, I'll shut up. Thanks again. Until next time, peace and much love.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?